I appreciate you coming out here. It's the first real opportunity I've heard to hear Muslims. I read a lot, though. I think you're operating under terrific burden. Your numbers of terrorist activities and the few that Muslims were participating in pales beside the impact of 9/11, where 3,000 Americans were killed by Muslims. You have that burden. It's unfortunate. Another burden you have is the international situation, where, as you said, finally at the end of your talk, Muslims kill Muslims. I would think that that would come very high in explaining Islam. Also, I think that to make your point, you have to deal with the international situation, which is terrible. Just today I read 1 million Christians have relocated from Muslim countries because of the persecution. I know personally, well, I don't know personally, but I know the names of 3 Muslim pastors who are being persecuted because they're pastors, because your religion calls them apostates and will kill them if they don't reconvert to their language. So it's not, again, I appreciate what you're trying to do. You have a large effort on your hands, but I think you have to take positions both defending the international activities of Muslims. Thank you.
Actually, it's actually easy for me, and I'll tell you why. I can separate the faith from the actions of the people who claim to follow the faith. So I'm not in the business of supporting anybody who's doing anything wrong. Just because they're Muslims, if they're doing evil, they're evil, period. If they're actually claiming to be Muslim, even worse, because you're not supposed to do those things. When your faith is telling you that you have to protect the right of those individuals and you're not actually following your own faith, I don't have no problem giving them the usual law and enforcement requirements that they should have. So I can easily stand here and comfortably tell you what my faith tells me. But I cannot in the same way say, well, if that person is professing to be a Muslim and is doing that action wrong, he's doing it wrong, period. So, and that's how I differentiate it. And it's pretty simple in my mind that just like there are people who are criminals who are of Christian faith, that doesn't mean the faith is bad. Christianity is a beautiful faith. My faith says that Christianity is a beautiful faith, but that Christian who's doing something wrong does not mean that the entire faith of Christianity is going to be now judged. You have to just be fair. And that's not what's happening in our society. Because, and there's data to support it too, that as soon as a Muslim is doing something wrong, even if, God forbid, that person has a psychiatric problem and does something wrong, he's going to be looked at differently. Just look at what happened in Boston. And then look at what happened with this policeman who actually was in California area. How much of television coverage difference was that? That guy was a trained individual who actually had snapped and he started to kill people. These guys had snapped as well and they started to kill people too, but it's so many days later, that's the #1 news that you hear every single moment from the coverage point of view. And the faith, oh well, maybe his mom talked to him about jihad. That's the CNN's #1 news, that maybe his mother talked to him about jihad. That's #1 news in the US, when the entire world, millions of people are dying from other issues. So I think there's an unfairness in our majority population at times, and this happens in every part of the world. That's what's happening in the Muslim majority countries, that if one Christian does something wrong, they actually persecute the entire community. That's evil, that's wrong, they shouldn't be doing that. And when they start, and these are the clergy at times, they're actually using a child's wrong actions or even lack of wrong actions and persecuting a community, a minority community, that's evil. And my faith is black and white in that and tells you you're not supposed to do that, you're supposed to protect them. And so that's how I look at it. I'm sorry.
I think I agree, and no more than a Christian should feel responsible for what is happening in Africa in the name of Christianity through Lord's Republican Army. What they're doing is wrong, and I don't ever remember anybody asking a fellow Christian, well, we should feel responsible. No, you're not responsible. There are political and criminal and other elements that you have no control of here in America. You wish it had not happened. But they did not call you and say, what does America think about our actions? They did not ask you for guidance, nor are they willing to accept guidance from you. So you are, as I am and as they are, you are responsible for what you do today. And I think that's where my responsibility will be, is what I do today.
I'd like to say one brief thing. I think we have to be very careful when we say things Islam teaches, because as soon as we say that, we often are overgeneralizing. You know what I mean? For example, Islam teaches that we should kill apostates. Was just watching a program out of Saudi Arabia, and it was on the issue of apostasy. What they did is they actually had a panel of Muslim scholars from Al-Azhar, from Mecca, from Medina, etc., and they were discussing this. The vast majority said, of course not, you don't kill them. There's no compulsion in the faith. There was one guy that says, yeah, kill them and kill them fast. But that's this group of Muslims with that particular interpretation who came to that particular conclusion, right? So I think when someone says, what do Muslims believe, I go, which Muslims are we talking about? When they say, what does Islam teach? Which interpretation are we talking about? So that we don't make these gross generalizations. And the other thing that I think we have to be careful about as people of faith is there's a tendency, I think, sometimes for us to compare our ideals against their reality. The reality of how they live out their faith against our ideals, right? Because if you look at the realities of how people live out their faith, it's disappointing, often disappointing.
This is Dr.